Imagine, even before a single word is spoken, the silent immensity of the African savanna. The heat is so intense that the air seems to quiver under the relentless sun, and the few sounds one hears come from insects hidden among the dry foliage. On the horizon, the earth blends into the sky in a blur of orange light, making everything appear distant and unattainable. This place, at once vast and challenging, becomes the setting for the tiny figure of Sophie, an 8-year-old child who, at first glance, seems completely out of place in such a merciless environment. You can picture this child wearing torn clothes, dusty and stained by the constant flow of sweat. Her skin is sunburnt, and her once vibrant blonde hair now hangs in tangled, dry strands. In her eyes, there is a mixture of fear and determination. The savanna, with all the surprises it holds, does not soften at the sight of this frail girl, yet something inside her refuses to give up. She has cerebral palsy, which makes every movement a monumental effort. Even so, she is there, painstakingly dragging herself toward a small patch of shade beneath the only twisted tree in sight. In the first moments, no one knows how she ended up there, nor why she was left alone. There is only the certainty that survival is a second-by-second matter. When she finally finds the meager refuge from the sun, the girl attempts to steady her body on the dry ground. Her hands tremble, but she does not feel cold. It is fear that quickens her breathing, a blend of helplessness and the realization that no other human soul seems to be around. The wind stirs small clouds of dust, whipping against her face. It is as though nature wants to test her endurance, to see how far the courage of a child who cannot even stand without help will go. As the minutes pass, the heat remains suffocating. Even in the shade, she sweats profusely, feeling her mouth go dry, her lips crack, and a constant nausea in her stomach. The silence becomes deafening, almost desperate, until the girl decides to occupy her mind. Using what little strength she has, she gathers scattered pebbles and arranges them in an uneven circle before her, as if this small task could give her the illusion of protection. From time to time, she looks around, hoping someone might appear from behind a rise in the terrain, but she is always met with the same endless, repetitive landscape. Time drags on so slowly that the hours seem far too long. When the sun begins its descent in the sky, easing the heat a bit, she hears a different sound, something that doesn't seem to come from insects or the wind. She lifts her head, apprehensive. She sees nothing at first, but the feeling of being watched grows stronger. Her heart races, her breath catches in her throat. She risks calling for help, but her voice is just a hoarse whisper, with no echo. In the next instant, a shape appears on the horizon, something large walking with a slight imbalance. It is a lion. It limps because it is missing one paw, but even so, its silhouette is imposing against the late afternoon light. Sophie feels fear pierce through her like an electric shock. She can barely move quickly. If it decides to attack her, there will be nothing she can do. The animal moves forward in slow steps, staring in her direction. The child holds her breath. She would never have imagined her first encounter with another living creature out here would be with the region's most feared predator. Yet what happens next is beyond any prediction. The lion stops a few meters away, lifts its head as if testing the air, then sits down. For a long moment they study each other. The girl's hands are sweaty, and she has a fluttering feeling in her stomach that contrasts with the oppressive heat. She keeps her eyes locked on the lion's, not daring to move a muscle. It observes her almost studiously, as though trying to understand what this figure so out of place in the savanna might be. Seconds pass that feel like an eternity, until the child hazards a whisper that barely carries. She begs it not to hurt her, even though she knows her words won't matter if its wild instincts take over. But it doesn't move. Its nostrils flare, taking in the scent of the small human, and its tail sways slightly. To Sophie's surprise, the lion lies down under the same tree, keeping a safe distance. She doesn't know its motivation, but somehow senses that this encounter may mean more than just danger. Maybe there is a chance of help here, as unlikely as that sounds. When the sun finally disappears behind the horizon, the temperature begins to drop, and the night wind rustles the dry leaves on the ground. With nightfall come other natural threats, especially for a defenseless child. Her entire body protests with fatigue, but she can barely close her eyes, fearing anything that might approach. The first nocturnal roars echo, and the girl stirs the pebbles she gathered, as though seeking distraction or comfort in that simple act. The lion remains alert. Now and then it lifts its head and sniffs the air, attentive to any strange sound. Darkness envelops the landscape, and soon glowing points flicker in the distance, pairs of hyena eyes roaming in search of food. For them, Sophie would be easy prey, but they have not accounted for the presence of the big cat beside her. When some hyenas draw closer, forming an ever-tightening semicircle, the lion stands up, growling low. Its posture becomes rigid, and Sophie can almost feel the vibration of its roar through the ground. The hyenas hesitate, aware that even an injured lion is a dangerous opponent. One advances, perhaps testing the limits, and with surprising speed, the lion strikes with its front paw. The blow is brief but enough to make the hyena retreat, yelping sharply. The others disperse, staying farther away, watching in silence. The child can hardly believe what she is seeing. This animal, as frightening as it may be, has just protected her. She does not know if this happened out of territorial instinct or because, in some way, the lion recognizes her as a defenseless being. The fact remains that after this tense encounter, the hyenas decide not to push further. They linger in the darkness for a while but eventually move off, and the lion returns to its vigilant spot. Sophie, still trembling, murmurs a thank you in a faint voice, gazing at the imposing form keeping watch. Night wears on, and fatigue gradually overcomes the girl. She curls up against the tree trunk, her eyelids heavy, her mind filled with fear, but also a strange sense of comfort. She sleeps for a few hours under the lion's constant supervision. From time to time, it moves to chase off suspicious sounds. When the sun reappears, the savanna awakens in shades of orange and yellow. Sophie opens her eyes, feeling every part of her body ache. Nearby, still lying down, the lion blinks slowly, as though it spent the night without closing its eyes. There is a moment in which they stare at each other in the soft morning light, and it seems a silent bond is born. She, a child with cerebral palsy, alone and fragile, and he, an animal marked by some struggle that cost him one of his paws. Both, in different ways, know what it is to face a hostile world without certainty of survival. Hunger gnaws at Sophie's stomach. She places her hands over her belly, finding nothing to eat besides a few crumbs left from a dried-out fruit. The lion gets up, sniffing the wind, and begins to walk. She senses she cannot just stay there, and despite her difficulties, sets about dragging herself in the same direction. They move across rough terrain, full of cracks and sharp shrubs. The sun rises ever higher, heating everything intensely. The girl pauses periodically to catch her breath, but the lion keeps looking back, as though encouraging her to keep going. Suddenly, she hears the unmistakable sound of water, soft, almost a murmur, but enough to spark hope. Using what strength remains, she makes her way to a small stream, shallower than one might wish, but still precious in that desert. Sophie dips her hands in the water, drinks and feels the refreshing relief soothe her parched throat. The lion also stops to lap up the liquid, remaining watchful of their surroundings. She cannot suppress a slight smile of gratitude. She picks up a fallen fruit she finds near a bush and eats it, even though it tastes bitter. She watches the lion, who shows no interest in fruit, as its instinct drives it to seek something more carnivorous, though there is little opportunity to hunt effectively under these conditions. In the days that follow, a silent routine takes shape. The girl follows the lion's steps, which seems to guide her to places where some kind of resource can be found. When night comes, they look again for a tree or a sheltered area, and he lies down nearby. By watching closely, she learns that a low growl means a distant threat, that a sudden flick of the tail indicates alert, and that abrupt stillness is a sign he hears something. He, in turn, seems to notice that she struggles to drag herself, and perhaps by instinct begins to slow his pace so as not to leave her behind. During moments of rest, Sophie, still breathing heavily, gazes at the lion's missing paw, imagining the pain he must have felt. A deep compassion stirs in her chest, for she recognizes they both have limitations imposed by life. She cannot walk without great effort, and he cannot run like other lions, and yet here they are, in a way supporting each other. Nighttime cold returns, and she curls up, shivering. On one such night, the lion settles closer, almost brushing against her side with his rough fur. The warmth radiating from him eases the discomfort of the wind, and she manages to sleep a bit better. In some sense, that contact reinforces the bond forming day by day. One morning that seems ordinary is suddenly disrupted by distant gunshots. These are not the cracks produced by nature, but metallic bangs, unmistakable to anyone who has heard them before. Sophie startles, her heart pounding. The lion instantly goes on alert, rising and sniffing the air more intensely. She hides behind a bush while he assumes a defensive stance. After a few minutes, two armed human figures appear in the distance, moving cautiously. The girl's eyes go wide, and she feels a mix of relief and dread. Relief at seeing humans, fear because they might be hunters. Indeed, by their makeshift uniforms and the rifles they carry, it is clear they are not there for rescues. They move slowly, pausing to analyze tracks on the ground. At one point, one of them points to footprints that likely belong to the lion. He makes an excited gesture, and they speak amongst themselves, indicating they intend to hunt it. They also notice signs of human footprints and become intrigued. Desperate, Sophie tries not to make a sound. She knows that if they find her, she may face an uncertain fate. The lion standing beside her lets out a low growl as if to caution her to stay quiet. The girl grabs a rock and throws it in the opposite direction, creating a noise that distracts the hunters, just long enough for her to creep toward a hiding spot among some rocks. There she makes gestures for the lion to follow, scratching drawings in the dirt and pointing to an escape route. It is not certain he understands, but by some miracle he follows her lead. They manage to slip out of the hunter's sight for a moment, but they can still hear distant voices. The hunters continue their pursuit, wanting to kill the lion to sell its body parts on the black market. The tension is constant. With each step, Sophie struggles against her own body and the hostile terrain. The heat is back, and once more, she feels her throat dry, her skin burning. Despite its limp, the lion pushes on and she crawls along, scraping her knees painfully. After a trek that feels endless, they reach a taller cluster of rocks, almost forming a small hill. There they try to position themselves so as not to be seen. The girl's heart beats so hard she fears it might be heard from afar. The lion remains silent, its senses poised to detect any approach. Suddenly the sound of engines erupts. Jeeps appear on the scene, but they do not seem to belong to the hunters. They are vehicles of an environmental protection team, dressed in proper gear. The group comes to a halt upon seeing the child, almost unable to believe the scene. A girl huddled beside a three-legged lion. They disembark, signaling to one another not to shoot. They are there specifically to confront illegal hunters. The girl raises a hand, silently begging them not to harm the lion. One of the men, possibly the leader, keeps his distance, approaching slowly and confidently so as not to startle the animal. She realizes these people might be her only chance at salvation, but she also fears for the lion's life. It eyes the group warily. Some of them aim tranquilizer guns, unwilling to risk an attack. Even so, they respect the fragile presence of the girl and the strangeness of that bond. Suddenly a gunshot rings out, a hunter firing from another position. The noise jolts everyone, and the girl drops down, covering her head, while the lion bristles at the commotion. The environmental protectors return fire, a rapid exchange that ends when they manage to surround and restrain the hunters. With the situation under control, attention returns to the girl and the lion. She is so frightened that she can barely speak. They give her water and cover her with a cloth to shield her from the sun, while the lion remains still, watching everything. To transport it safely, the team uses light tranquilizer darts, the only way to ensure it won't harm itself or attack them. The girl is almost panic-stricken at seeing the lion sedated, but one of the protectors reassures her they will not kill it, that they will care for it in a protected reserve. The animal lies down, its eyes blinking slowly, and before it fades into unconsciousness, it fixes its gaze on the child. She moves closer, stroking its fur and murmuring words of gratitude that likely only make sense to her. The lion finally drifts off, and the team hurriedly places it in a suitable vehicle, while other members see to Sophie's injuries and overall condition. What follows is a convoy leaving the arid landscape behind, taking along the prisoners, the hunters, the sedated lion, and the rescued girl. Hours later, in a place resembling a wildlife reserve, fenced off with simple facilities, Sophie receives her first real medical attention. A doctor assesses her dehydration, sunburn, and her motor difficulties. She is fed, given clean clothes, and allowed to rest in a tent with proper ventilation. Even so, she does not forget the lion. She looks questioningly at anyone who comes near, wanting to know if it is all right. She learns it was taken to a veterinary care center within the reserve, where they are examining its missing limb and treating possible infections. Days pass, and the girl gradually recovers, although she still experiences constant pain in her arms and legs from all the effort. She remembers little about her past or about the parents who abandoned her, but she vividly recalls the Savanna and the lion who saved her multiple times. The protectors try to investigate where she came from, but find no immediate clues. She seems utterly alone in the world, with no documents, no defined home. Despite all this, she shows an inner strength that surprises the adults around her. After some time, she is allowed to visit the area where the lion is kept. He remains under observation, still adjusting to the new environment, with proper food and fresh water, along with veterinary supervision. When the girl approaches the fence, the lion raises its head, sniffing the air. She reaches out through the bars unafraid, and he edges closer, though still wary. There is a mutual recognition that moves the protection team. No one fully understands the bonds that can form in extreme circumstances, but everyone senses something very profound has happened between that child and the big cat. As days go by, both Sophie and the lion continue to heal in their own ways. She undergoes physical therapy and receives care for her cerebral palsy, learning to move a bit better with assistive devices, and she rests in a clean, safe environment. He adapts to the food provided, goes through treatments to prevent infection in his amputated limb, and gradually regains energy he had lost. The reserve mobilizes to protect the lion from any future attacks, as illegal hunters still lurk in the area seeking exotic animals for trade. Grateful to be safe, the girl nonetheless feels a pang of sadness at the thought that she may have to leave the reserve. A social worker talks to her about being placed in a shelter, since no relatives can be identified. She does not want to be separated from the lion, who has become her greatest emotional support. Some of the protectors consider a way to keep her close, perhaps by placing her in a foster program or allowing regular visits. The most important thing is ensuring her safety and that the lion can live free from threats, even if partly in captivity, because with only 3 legs, his full survival in the wild remains uncertain. When the girl is medically discharged, she is taken back to the lion's enclosure, leaning on crutches. The sun is setting, painting the sky in orange and red tones, reminding her of the first twilight she witnessed with her protector. He comes forward at the fence, walking more steadily than before. She touches the mesh and the lion emits a low growl, not in fear or aggression, but in a gentle greeting. She feels tears well up, but also a warmth in her heart, knowing they both made it this far thanks to their unlikely union. Leaving is not easy, but she is given the promise of being able to return for visits. Some of the protectors even volunteer to supervise these visits and ensure everyone's safety. The girl accepts this with a maturity that many children would not possess, but which her circumstances have forced her to develop. Climbing into the jeep that will take her away from the reserve, she keeps her eyes on the lion, who watches her from behind the fence until the vehicle moves far enough that they lose sight of each other. Months later, settled into a shelter, the girl undergoes regular physical therapy. She gains some mobility. Her legs remain fragile, but her arms grow stronger. She receives psychological counseling, and some professionals try to talk to her about the trauma of having been abandoned and surviving under such extreme conditions. She speaks little but draws a great deal, repeatedly sketching a 3-legged lion in her pictures. When she is finally authorized to return to the reserve, she is greeted by familiar faces who waste no time in taking her to the lion's enclosure. She finds the space somewhat altered, with new structures built to give the rescued animals more room. Approaching, she feels anxious, worried he may have forgotten her after so long, but as soon as he sees her, it is as if nothing had changed. He lifts his head, sniffs the air, and walks over to her. Now he moves with a certain ease, having adapted to life without the missing limb. Their reunion is less outwardly emotional, with no human gestures of hugging or spoken words. Yet everything is there, in silence, in the lion's amber gaze and the girl's restrained smile, who, despite it all, retains a spark of courage and hope she discovered on the harshest days of her life. She stands by the fence, watching him move around and interact with other lions, feeling genuine happiness at seeing him well. Some people around them take photos, recording that moment as a testament to the kindness, empathy, and protective instincts that can emerge even in the most hostile environments. Over time, Sophie's story with the three-legged lion spreads, inspiring animal defenders and fueling discussions about the cruelty of illegal hunting. Many visitors arrive at the reserve wanting to meet the famed limping lion who saved a little girl, but the protectors prefer to keep the situation under control, not turning him into a sensational attraction. There is something profoundly symbolic in their shared journey. On one side, a child with motor limitations, abandoned by the world, survives the desert and its perilous nights. On the other, a proud predator scarred by its own struggles faces hyenas and hunters to protect someone who, under normal circumstances, would never have encountered him so closely. Both emerge from the experience transformed. The girl, stronger than ever, a new confidence gleaming in her eyes. The lion, more aware of what it means to care and be cared for, though such a notion may seem strange in the animal world. Their visits become periodic as time goes on. Sophie grows, and each time she returns, she finds the lion in better shape, fully adjusted to his environment, receiving care from veterinarians who respect his wild nature. She herself discovers a calling to care for animals, perhaps motivated by her experience. She talks about studying biology, veterinary medicine, or something that might allow her to give back a fraction of what she has received. On one of these visits, now older, she approaches with more autonomy, using only a cane for support. The lion comes near, sniffs, and the staff notice how much calmer he seems in her presence, as though the primal bond they share had never been broken. Sophie spends a few minutes in silence contemplating the animal, recalling the Savanna that brought them together. Each crease in his face, each hair in his mane, conjures memories of starry nights, endless horizons, and a fear that at times nearly overcame her. But it did not overcome her, nor him. And in that mutual understanding lies proof that nature, in all its brutality, can also foster cooperation and solidarity that transcend human understanding. The fact that Sophie is alive is due to that truth, and the lion's second chance is similarly woven into that narrative. Those who witness their connection may not know how to define what they feel, but they perceive the depth and strength of a friendship forged under extreme conditions. At the end of each visit, Sophie says goodbye without sadness. She knows it is not a definitive separation and carries the certainty that as long as it's possible, she will return to see her unlikely guardian. The lion in turn goes back to the area he shares with other rescues, aware in his own way that he is not alone. Perhaps he does not have full consciousness of what happened when he found her, but instinctively he understands that this girl's presence is unlike anything else. Their story takes on almost legendary contours in the region. Locals speak of a girl and a limping lion who defied the odds. School children from nearby areas visit the reserve to learn about wildlife preservation, about the consequences of illegal hunting, and how each being can adapt even in the most daunting circumstances. Many are inspired by Sophie's resilience, by the willpower that kept her alive when everything seemed against her. Others admire the lion, who continues on unaware that he has become a symbol of the broader fight against human cruelty. No one can guarantee the future. The African savanna remains a place full of dangers, where nature follows its cycle of predators and prey, and where human presence can be both beneficial and destructive. But in that reserve, there grows a hope that small gestures, like a growl that chased away hyenas or a hand that offered companionship to an injured animal, can change destinies. The girl, once voiceless in this world, now finds in her own story a reason to move forward and perhaps help other creatures that also need care and protection. Few words are needed to describe the bond that first formed in that initial encounter. A closer look at the savanna today does not reveal only danger and scorching heat, but also the memory of how the will to survive can unite such different beings around an essential goal: resisting abandonment, hatred, hunger, thirst, and the cruelest forms of violence life can impose. Each new day brings a chance to reaffirm that goal. Sophie, hunched over notebooks where she sketches drawings of the lion, recalls the stones she placed in a circle around her in those first desperate moments, realizing that the same hands that could barely move back then now create detailed sketches of a majestic feline, albeit one with only 3 paws. In that act, she preserves the memories, transforming them into art and teaching for anyone willing to listen. When someone asks how she managed to survive in the savannah, she shrugs, for there is no simple explanation. Perhaps it was chance, perhaps empathy, or even something greater than reason can name. But she always remembers to mention the lion that appeared one day on the horizon, becoming the rock she leaned on, the shield against the terror of wild nights. Without him, she surely would not have lasted. By the same token, without someone needing his protection, perhaps the lion would have succumbed to loneliness and the pain of not being able to hunt effectively. And so, the final image imprinted in memory is that of a child and a lion, sitting under a lone tree in the middle of an endless plain. The setting sun warms the scene, casting long silhouettes across the ground. There are no people, no rumble of cars, no gunshots, just 2 beings who have met at a point in their existence and who together decide to press on. Though each cannot fully grasp the other's universe, they share the instinct to remain alive. And in that small space, in that tenuous thread of understanding, lies the entire meaning of this story. Life, in its purest form, breaching barriers of species, language, and limitation to prove that hope can be as boundless as the savannah that almost swallowed them both.